welcome to The Mighty Dragon. I was joined recently on the podcast by Australian actress Maria Tran. Maria has featured on The Mighty Dragon previously, the last appearance being in October of 2020. Since Maria has relocated to Las Vegas, and she also stars in Last King of the Cross, a smash hit Australian series which is now available in the UK. It was a great time to catch up with Maria, and I said to her after this interview that I always felt that I'd learnt something from her after speaking to her, and I felt that again this time. Maria is a strong advocate for women filmmakers, absolutely inspirational and remaining totally fabulous. Best of luck, Maria, with everything that you do. Hi, Maria. How are you?
It's been such a long time since we spoke on this podcast, so it's great to see you again.
We last spoke in October of 2020. What's happened in life for you since we last spoke?
Oh, gosh, there's been so many dramatic changes. Like, not only have I been on a big Paramount Plus series, Last King of the Cross, I've also completed my own feature film, Echo 8. I relocated to the US, so I'm now based in Las Vegas, but also doing work between Australia and also the US. And it's been so many different new things that have emerged since then. Yeah.
So you've been doing a lot of commuting to the US and to Australia and all over. Sounds a very busy time.
Yeah, I mean, this year alone, I think I've got 4 flights back and forth, and they're quite long as well. So it's always in jet lag or something.
So you're Madame Tien in Last King of the Cross. What can you tell me about your character and about the series?
Yeah, so Last King of the Cross is this really epic series that is based on the book inspired by John Ibrahim. My character's originally not in the book, so it's a fictional character. But let me tell you, because I grew up in the area of Cabramatta, and knowing what it's like, were women who were quite matriarchal, quite business orientated. And I guess Madame Tien is a character that reflected the plight of a lot of refugee migrants coming into Australia who just want to be able to, make the most of things. And that was her character. She was a refugee migrant who was a croupier, and she basically worked her way up to becoming one of the ruthless gang leaders of the region in the area.
Gosh, that's interesting. What do you like about your character?
To be honest, I love my character, particularly because it showcases the strength of Asian women, because a lot of times we're always seen as more submissive, and but this character has this amazing strength, and she's motivated because she wants the best for her family. And she's migrated to this country. She's only got a brother. He's in a wheelchair. She's trying to make ends meet, and she's realizing this world that she's in, there's easier ways to make money. And she started to follow the trail, the breadcrumbs, to realize, well, if she wants to get ahead, she needs to get into the business, the drug business.
Wow. Is it a physical character, as in, are you using your martial arts?
No. So this is the first time my character is pretty much the person who deploys her people to go do the heavy work. But she's very calculative. She's always thinking 10 steps ahead. So it's quite an interesting character to play. And for me, I had the great pleasure to work with so many great actors, including Tim Roth.
Yes.
And he was absolutely amazing to work with. I've learned so much as an actor. I still feel like I'm like the new kid on the block on the show, to be honest with you, because prior to that, prior to me getting Last King of the Cross, I actually moved to the US thinking, that's it. I've moved over here with 2 suitcases of film gear, film equipment, and let's see where I'm going to go with this, because I don't know, I've been doing so many independent things for so long. I just don't know where or what else I can do. And then 5 months in America, I, did all the audition and got that role. And then I came back to Australia. And yeah, it did global casting, and it was quite intense. So for me, getting the role, and not only that, working with some of the best in the industry was just an eye-opener. And Tim, he's got such an amazing presence about him. And to be honest, when I worked with him on different scenes, I think I felt like there was a higher demand on not just looking at performance on a technical level, and really, really be in the present. And I would have these moments where when I'm having a conversation with Tim, and it's just interesting because, yes, we know what's on the page. We know what we were supposed to say, but we take it, I feel like there's moments where we take it to another level where it's like a black void and it's just me and him, and we're just like two energies trying to get what we want or trying to understand each other in that moment with just the words that we're saying. So it was just very, on an interesting level. And we had many conversations set, and I really enjoyed having spent time with him talking about just his careers, his choices, his ups and downs, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. I was going to ask you about him. And I also saw on a message between us, actually, you mentioned working with Ian McShane too.
Well, Ian McShane was originally supposed to be casted as the character Ezra, but then last minute, I think he got sick, and then they had to quit the replacement, and Tim Roth was the actor.
Ah, right. Yes. Great. He's definitely one of my favorite actors, and I was going to ask you what it was like working with him, and kind of what do you learn about acting working with someone like Tim Roth?
Tim, he's got this amazing spontaneity about him. He looks at the text and he just does things with it that you kind of go, oh, wow, like I didn't think that you would take the character like that, right? Yeah. Because his characters on page seemed quite serious, like really brooding, serious type. But then he just threw that out and just did his own take on it.
Wow.
And it was a lighter take, but then at the same time, as the series went along, he kind of borderline some sort of psychosis, like he was quite psychotic, and it was just interesting the way he played it. And towards the end, you can just see these moments where you're just like, what is with him? Like there's something about him that's very unsettling, even though when he talks to people, he's like, he's just very casual, but underneath was something brewing. And I think it really got me to really not think of characters at a face value. And that's always a joy. I think each time him and I, we would do our scene. And I noticed with him is if you didn't like this, the energy or the connection, who's like, let's do it again. Let's do it again. So we'll just do it again until we get that flow. And I think for him, like that's how he jams, right? But not a lot of people will find that very comfortable, because people have certain set ways of working where he kind of throws out the door and he's just trying to find these moments that maybe other actors might not find it's easy to understand. And I can see it's quite hard. It's quite difficult to understand what is he trying to find? But when he finds it, you can tell because his eyes really light up and he's there with you in the scene. And I just felt like it's so different from what sometimes we're taught in acting school and how we've been told what acting is. To me now, I felt like acting was something so spiritual, and I know something that is not just in here. It's a combination of different elements of this here and the spirit of your character that you showcase, you let out to connect with other characters and see where it goes. So sometimes I'm in scenes with there was one scene that I was in, but it got cut. But I remember there was a moment where we did the scene and he was like, oh, that was interesting. Like, I kind of felt we're in a different place, Maria. And it was kind of like, it became almost like trying to size each other up, but towards the end there's a respect, but also a sexual energy. So I was like, where did that come from? But at the same time, it was like, when you're in a scene, it was just conversation, but you can kind of tell like, I'm trying to get this from you. Is that what you want? And then finally, I respect you because you're this woman who's got nothing, who's coming to me to want this thing, but there is something there. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and that wasn't in the page, but you can just feel this connection to someone because you just feel it, and it's hard to explain. Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. I honestly can't. I'm so excited to see it on TV yesterday advertised, and I was like, oh gosh, Maria is in this.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I got casted the role, like a lot of times people look at me and they go, oh, you look like this young person how could you play a Madame Tien? Like, so throughout the process of playing this character, I'm fortunate enough to, be able to give sort of my insight into how I wanted to build this character. And I was reading a book, about Madame Yu, who was during the 1975. She had this big story about her and the fall of Saigon and all that stuff. Right? And I had to read into the psychology of her. And then I also wanted to kind of look like what she looked like and had the kind of the similar hairdo. So I really got a chance to really immerse myself in a character that I felt like that was going to showcase who Madame Tien was like, and going into history and actually researching women who were quite ruthless during their time. So,
and what does she look like?
Older, she looked more jagged. She looked more like sharper. When she looked at things, you could just tell she's making a decision to do something. And there's this undertone of danger about her because she needs to make decisions to save her mob, her collective, her family. So any time she does a wrong decision, someone's going to die. So that's how. So therefore, there's always this edge about her. You don't see her physically, but you can tell she's got this. And the way she converses is it just cuts, I would say, into the psyche of her enemies. So she does do a lot of psychological power play, but not in a sense physical. Just she implants moments in people's minds and let that fester. She's very good at that. So I really enjoyed that in discovering that about her, being able to do that because that's not my character. In real life, I'm completely opposite of that.
I was talking recently, actually, my last interview was with, did you see The Last Kingdom, the character Heston? And I was chatting to that actor, and he was saying that when he looked back into Heston's past, this guy was a hero, and he was like a super powerful Viking, and he was doing all this cool stuff that they actually wrote for the main character. And historically, he did all of that stuff. It's so interesting. He said he wanted to read it, but Heston, how he portrayed it, had to be different. When I read up about Last King of the Cross, it's about feuding brothers. And I think I've said here, since Cain and Abel, this theme has always been really gripping. Where do you think that is?
It's gripping because it's always going to reflect the push and pull nature of how humans are. There's a thing about us is we're always trying to get more, and where we take action, but sometimes taking all these actions, we just keep on wanting more. And then sometimes that greed takes over, that people who are our families become our enemies because they might get in the way. They might be stopping us from getting what we want, but really, is that what we want? So there's always that sort of push and pull, I find. And I guess it comes down to a lesson of sincerity and how we live our lives and the choices we make and why we make them. And I think it's a part of who we are. We're constantly, as human beings, we're asked that, like, ourselves. Why are we here? Why are we doing the things we're doing? And I think humans naturally have this thing where we feel like we don't have enough. I know, but in sort of feeling, that sort of thought, that sort of momentum propels us to do things that undoes all the good work if we don't really keep ourselves in check. Yeah, and that's grouping. Because, some of the most catastrophic things in the world that happens comes from fear. And fear comes from when you think there's a lack, and a lack comes from because you want everything. So it's just like all interconnected. It's fascinating, kind of thing to see time and time again, in film and television and stories.
Yes. I read too that it was rumoured to be the most expensive Australian TV drama. Did you feel that on set?
Yes, I felt like it was one of the biggest, like it is a huge risk because you think about it, like they made like I don't know, multi-million dollar like street that replicated the 1980s of the King's Cross. They literally and I remember being on that street. I'm like, oh my gosh, in every single store, people watch and they go, this is going back in time because they couldn't like film it the way they did if they didn't build a whole street with, I don't know, 10 shops. And inside the shops, you could see they set it up just like it was back in the day. So they really put a lot of effort into achieving the timelessness of that era, especially in production design. So yeah, and the fact that they got Tim, like they wanted this series to go international, so they put a lot of effort into going, hey, let's give it our best shot. So yeah, you can feel it.
Great. So where and when can we watch Last King of the Cross?
You know what's interesting is in Australia, they've just wrapped up on, releasing episode 10, right? So now it's in plus in Canada and also in the UK.
Yes.
So I've only been following breadcrumb trails in terms of and it's interesting, you're seeing it on TV. You're seeing it pop up as well. So I'm like, oh wow, so it's actually getting there. So I'm guessing it should be dropping soon. I'm keen to find out like how people in the UK can catch that.
And I've been looking through your credits on IMDb, and I was shocked at how much you have coming up and what you're involved with. Such a busy person. How do you manage your time and your family life?
It's hard because like it's interesting because myself and my husband Takashi Hara, like we came to the US a few years ago and now settled at the same time. Like we realized that, there's still so much work to do. When we came here, we're basically starting anew. And then not only that, we have to also be ultra focused going, well, we've done all this work in Australia. How do we find ways to still be focused and still get to a point where we can still continue to do what we do? For me, I realized that I can't just go, I'm just an actor. I'm never going to be that way. Because for me, I want to be someone who is championing women in independent cinema, because we never get to see stories that we want to be told in the way we want it to be, especially if you do things in the system. There's a lot of other factors that come into play that shape the story, right? But for me, I realized, you know what? And on top of that, I love being in front and behind the camera. I've had people go, oh, that's you should just specialize. And I was like, why does Jackie Chan get to do it? Why do the greats of action cinema, males, they get to do whatever they want, whereas females, they're quite limited to certain things. I recently interviewed Cynthia Rothrock, one of the greats of action cinema, female greats, action cinema. And even for her, she's coming to a point in her 60s saying, I'm just now going to make my own films. I want to make films that the stories I want to tell. Yeah. And she's realized at a later age. So for me, being able to connect with these people, I realized that if this is what they're facing, I need to set myself, be focused and be really good at directing, acting, and be sort of a person that could get projects up the ground, like from the grassroots community and out there. So Echo 8 is something that we've just completed. And from there onwards, myself and my colleagues, my film friends were like, well, people are saying that it's a fluke. Like it was just an accident. And I was like, how do we make a feature film from $10,000 as an accident? That's not an accident. It just didn't drop from the sky. But it's funny because as women, when we do things and we get successful at it, we are seen as an accident. Like, how is that, right? So then I said to them, we're going to make a trilogy. And in 2 years' time, we're going to shoot a trilogy. And they're like, what, we're making 2 films, not just 1 film? I'm like, if I make another film, it takes about 5 years to get it finished and completed. So why don't we shoot 2 films back to back and have that in post-production? And after it's all done, I'm probably the only person in the world that's made a very Asian-centric, female-led action film trilogy. I don't think anyone can top me for under the budget of like, you know, because each film we're looking at the next one, we're trying to raise like, you know, minimum $50,000. But for two films, it's ridiculous, right? My first film's 10. So it's crazy. Like people just don't believe that it's possible. But on Echo Way, we have the Mike Leader. He's a very formidable character in our film that we've been so grateful to have him in our movie, even though we shot his scene in Zoom. But we just then realized that actually we can make films beyond borders. We don't have to be physically getting actors, you know, in and out to places. We can write around this characters off-site, but still have their presence in it. And that started to open our minds up to say that we can be clever with how we tell stories and how we tell edgy stories that the world would want to see.
And also, Maria, I think we're going to see filmmaking more like this now. I know with the production teams where I work, they're having to do things more sustainably now. So that's the big buzzword, and that's what they're focusing on. So I think we're just going to see more films like that. I wanted to ask you about Las Vegas. I've had quite a few people from Vegas on my podcast. And what is it that's drawing filmmakers to Vegas?
Vegas I feel like there's more space, there's more synergies happening out here because it's not as saturated in LA. Like I feel like in LA, you go there, everyone's a filmmaker, everyone's an actor, everyone's a writer or something like that, right?
Yeah.
There's a huge buzz in LA. Each time I go to LA for events, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at the amount of talent out here. Like, but then once I go back to Vegas, I'm like, okay, oh wow, I've been inspired by people in LA, but what can I do? What can I create that I can bring towards people who might want to spend a weekend making a film or get together and shoot something? Because I'm always about experimentation. It's not just about let's pull all our energies into a perfect project. It doesn't happen, right? If a woman wants to be an action director or she wants to do action or fight choreographer, she needs to hone her craft by making test material to see if she can understand what her vision is like when she exercises it out in reality. Especially when it comes to directing, you need to have good communication skills. You need to understand people's psychology, how people's moods, how to get the best out of people. In Vegas, I've been collaborating with different people on different projects, and I realized the energy, there's a bit of a flow. So people are excited with new energy. They're not looking at me going, oh, what are you going to show me? You know what I mean? Because sometimes when people look at you, they kind of go, you don't look like you've got much. You look like a smiley face, a smiley happy. You look like, you know, whatever stereotypes people put on you. That's just how it is, right? But in Vegas, I feel like there's less of that. And people just say, oh, yeah, let's do it. Yeah. So that's a similar energy of where I came from in Western Sydney in Australia, because I realized if you work with people who aren't like filmmakers, like more from the community or people who love films but are not the makers, there's more like camaraderie. There's more like family feel when it comes to making films, because people realize how special the moment is. And that's how you make magic when it comes to filmmaking and cinema, is you bring a group of people together who believes in the vision of the project, and they just give their hearts out and then make something amazing. Because you can't make films from $10,000 on a Hollywood system. No way. That's their catering. That's like a day's catering budget. Right? That's so ridiculous. So when people look at me, how'd you do it? I'm like, you know what? I did it because it's the value of community, and it's priceless. You can't put a dollar amount on. Yeah.
Last question. What else do you have coming up this year?
This year, so I'm in between. So I'm going back to Australia to do a launch of a documentary or video at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, which is called Women in Martial Arts. So there's a selection of like 10 women from around Australia, including Cynthia Rothrock, even though she's not Australian, but she was our kind of headline. And that video is going to be seen at the gallery. I'm doing a live art performance, as well as doing a table read for my trilogy. Echo 8, we have a prequel and a sequel written by Elizabeth H. Vu, very talented writer. And then I head back to the US for a couple of months, and then I head back to Australia for another film. But in the meantime, I've been writing up a lot of applications, a lot of grants to see if I can sustain what I do, because from now to 2025, I still need to raise the financing for the film that I want to make. So every single day has been strategic. Every single day I wake up, I'm like, okay, wake up, focus. Okay, today, why do we want to make this film? Because we want to show the world that anyone can make films. Films can be accessible. Women can make films, and all that. So I'm always trying to keep focus so that I know that if I keep on having that vision and work toward that vision, it's going to happen. I don't know why, something about the universe or the world, when you have good intentions and you want to make something for everyone to share and to feel proud of, things kind of like have this amazing ripple effect. So that's pretty much in the works for me at the moment. My projects, films, and then realizing that, time is still limited. I realized that, since we last spoke to now, there's been so much that's happened. And I know that from now to later on, there's still going to be so much that will happen, but I still need to realize I'm still the same person. I still care. I love every human being. Like it's ridiculous. I hear about stories about actors sometimes being a little bit standoffish or whatever, but I'm like, why? It doesn't make sense to me, because I'm like, if you're a loving and a giving human being, regardless of how you get treated by a one-off bad apple, in general, you will get so much love back. You know what I mean? For me, that's how I think, right? And so when I meet people who are like, oh, you shouldn't give so much, I'm like, wow, why? Is there some sort of unlimited amount that once you give, you stop having love or something? It just doesn't compute. So that's the same principle I have with my work, my whether it's my acting or filmmaking. There's always a lot of love, and the people who come on board will also start giving. And the more we give, the more we just have so much abundance to make what we do. But I really am very interested in independent cinema, because that just gives people who don't have any accessibility in that craft some sense of empowerment, that they can make stories regardless of where they're at in the world, regardless of who they are, regardless of their age or what stories they want to tell. They can still tell it, because it's not just waiting on the studio system to tell your stories. You can do it yourself.
Yes. Maria, I remember when I spoke to you a few years back, I felt like I'd learned so much from you. And I feel that again today. I just feel completely empowered after speaking to you. So thank you for coming on to the Mighty Dragon podcast again. And I hope it's not another 3 years until you're next back here. All the very best with Last King of the Cross and everything else that you're doing, which is just wonderful and completely inspiring. So thank you so much, Maria. Have a great weekend and hopefully see you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye.